What's good, y'all? Back again today with a very special video. So today I wanted to talk about something that's very important as far as moving forward. If you may have noticed a few of my videos, I tackle the issue of racism because I think it's a very important thing that we understand that we're all humans. And as cliche as that may sound, some people just don't understand the concept that we are all indeed human beings at the very core of it all. So before I move forward, I wanted to talk about the idea of indoctrination. Now, you may have heard the word indoctrination before, or to be indoctrinated, but I wanted to give you a more precise definition as far as the word is concerned. So let's go to the dictionary. Again, I use the Oxford Dictionary because to me, the Oxford Dictionary is very precise, and this one is actually a dictionary and a thesaurus. So I just wanted to tell you the definition really quickly and some of the synonyms for to be indoctrinated, okay? It says indoctrinate is to teach, to accept ideas uncritically. So to teach someone a set of ideas without critique or without question is to indoctrinate them. To tell them something and make them believe it and make them follow that guideline without being able to question that is to indoctrinate them. So we see off the bat that that's not necessarily good in any scenario. You should never be in any scenario to where you're not able to question the motives of what you're being told to do. So now a synonym for indoctrinate would be to train, to instruct, to discipline, to brainwash, or to propagandize. Again, these are words that are in the Oxford Dictionary. It says indoctrinate is to teach someone to accept something uncritically, to discipline or brainwash or propagandize them. So again, we see some few words that are familiar. I made a video about propaganda before. I've made a video about what some may call brainwashing before. So these are some ideas that I've touched on before. And the reason why I don't go full-fledged in any video, I don't just give my full extent of knowledge in any video is because, like anything, learning is a journey. So I plan to walk with you and not ahead of you or not before you. I plan to walk with you in this path of journey. And so we could find a common understanding of moving forward. It's similar to a classroom. If I were a math teacher, for instance, and I didn't know what the level of comprehension of math my students were at, I would probably start from the basics. So maybe some people understand calculus, maybe some people understand basic math, some people understand division. But as a teacher, it's my responsibility to at least start at 1 + 1 so that we could have that common understanding. So now that we have that common understanding of what indoctrination is, let's move forward. Now, I do have a proposed plan on how to break certain indoctrinated spells that we've been placed on as a people. And when I say indoctrination, I mean, for instance, the idea of white supremacy, you may have heard. I just want to elaborate in my particular view. In my opinion, white supremacy hasn't necessarily been labeled right. It's something like the Frankenstein monster where we don't necessarily know how to kill it. We don't know where it came from, how to kill it. We have to understand that much like the Frankenstein monster, white supremacy is a creation. If you know the story of Frankenstein, you may think that the monster that you see walking around with the bolts in his neck, that's Frankenstein. Actually, Frankenstein was the doctor who created the monster. And the monster that you see on the movies, that's actually just called Frankenstein's monster. So similarly to that, we can understand that white supremacy is not the end-all be-all. White supremacy is merely a creation and a construct from a creator. Now that we're armed with that knowledge that white supremacy is just a form of indoctrination that was created, it's much easier to tackle it because we could understand that it came from a certain amount of people, it came from a certain group of people, and with that we can dispute it with facts. But I didn't necessarily only want to speak about white supremacy because that topic has been covered a numerous amount of times. What I wanted to also speak about is different forms of indoctrination that we may not be aware of. I was watching a video recently on YouTube, and I really love YouTube because it's one of the last few beacons of hope, even though with all of its downfalls. It has a lot of good people on there with good intentions, and they don't have any middleman. They're not under any contract to not be able to say anything or to try to mislead you. There's a lot of real people on YouTube. So I was watching this person on YouTube, a young woman. Her channel is Woke Black Woman, 3 different words, Woke Black Woman. She's a really intelligent young woman. But anyway, she made a video and she said that white supremacy is what we need to destroy, and that all white people are not to blame. Now, I've said this before in my videos as well. I actually said this in most of my videos, that all white people aren't to blame, and that white supremacy, the ideal of white supremacy, just needs to be destroyed, which again is just the idea that white people are supreme to everyone else. That idea, we can tackle it with facts, okay? But as far as this woman, Woke Black Woman, she made that video, and I was watching it and I thumbs it up and I encouraged her, and I read through the comments and I noticed that there were a few people who, I doubt that they watched the whole video, but they decided to critique her for whatever reason and said that, oh, well, she's not as woke as we think she is, and she's stupid and these type of things, because basically she doesn't blame all white people. And this is a topic that I really am concerned about, and I'm really sensitive about it because I have a story that I wanted to share with you guys. So I remember when I was in 7th grade, I went to a middle school that was predominantly Caucasian. It was in a suburb, and I was maybe one of 6 black people. To be fair, to be modest, there were maybe 6 black people in the entire middle school, and I was one of them. There were a few times that I was made to feel uncomfortable, but for the most part, they were very accepting of me, as they should be. And there was one guy that I grew really close with. His name was Matt. And me and Matt were really tight. This was a European, blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy. Me and Matt were like so close. We had lunch together every day. We would laugh. We would talk about video games and everything. One day we decided, as kids usually often do, that we wanted to go spend the night over each other's house. So I can't remember if it was me going to his house or him coming to my house. But actually, now that I think about it, it was I wanted to spend the night at his house. So he asked his mom and dad, could he spend the night, or can I spend the night rather, at his house? The next day he came to me, and Matt actually told me that his mother plain out told him, no, you cannot have him over here because he is black. Verbatim. This is exactly what he told me, quote unquote. He came and told me in 7th grade that, Josh, my mom said you cannot spend the night because you're black. That was the only explanation I got. And that was the 7th grade. And mind you, at the time, I was slightly aware of racial tensions. I mean, I knew about Martin Luther King and things like this, but I never necessarily had been directed by it or had it directed towards me so aggressively. You know, usually when you speak to someone's mom, they're the voice of reason. It's like you go to someone's mom and they tell you the right thing to do. But this guy went to his mom and she said, no, you can't have him over because he's black. And this goes back to the idea of indoctrination that I was speaking about. When you think about a Caucasian person or a black person or any person in particular, many of the time, what their parents tell them is what they grow to believe over time. So while Matt was in the 7th grade, he was completely naive to the whole idea of racism, and he just wanted his friend to come over who happened to be black. His mother and father were the one who were indoctrinating him. Again, indoctrinating meaning making him adhere to a lifestyle that he is not able to question or not able to challenge, they were indoctrinating him to have a tension towards black people, or to just have a complete despise for black people. And this is why we need to think about the idea that not all white people are bad. Because it brings me to another story that I was at work recently, and I saw a really young baby. He had to be maybe a year and a half, and he was just learning to walk, still had the pacifier. And, you know, again, a young European, blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby. And when he looked at me, he just smiled and he put his hand up. And I smiled right back at him and I put my hand up. And I could see it in his eyes, because I'm in tune with myself and I'm in tune with other people. I could see in my mind what I call God. I saw that in this young European boy's eyes. And now some people may call me a coon for that, but if you honestly can look at a 1.5-year-old child, regardless of their race, and say that is a beast, as some people would say that any European person is a beast or a monster or a devil, if you could look at a 1.5-year-old innocent child and call that a beast, well, we need to understand that you're hurt. You're psychologically hurt, and that's a defense mechanism that you're using because of the oppression that's been put on you. And me, as a black person, I've decided to speak as a representative for other black people. That means I speak for black people and to black people. So in a case where black people need a representative, I'm here. But in the same case where a black person needs to be told that they're wrong or they need to change their approach, I'm also here. So I'm here to change the approach of black people who are saying that all white people are devils, because that's not the case. It's more so the case that a number of white people have been indoctrinated to believe a set of beliefs that they are superior and we are inferior, okay? But we have to understand that that construct of thinking has been fueled by things like the media and propaganda through news and things of that nature. So it's not necessarily solely the fault of these white people. That's what we need to understand. I want to close off with one last story. And yes, I guess it's story time. But this form of indoctrination hits closer to home. Now, my mother, and forgive me, Mom, but I have to be honest, because this is not a phenomenon that's just occurring in my household. In many households across America, in the black households, it's unsaid that mothers are telling their children, you better not get a white girl. Now, let's not go there. I'm not going to go deep into that. But yes, my mom told me as I was younger, you better not get a white girl. Now, she was telling me that upon reflection, now that I think about it, she was telling me that because of the years of different forms of oppression that she had seen at the hands of a certain group of white people that had led her to believe and led her to live a life conducive to thinking that all white people were devils. So much so that she would tell her 6-7-year-old black boy child not to marry or intermingle or have children or to even love a white woman. So this is another form of indoctrination that we have to break. It's not just white people who are being told. It's actually now become black people who, in a form of self-defense or retaliation, have then labeled all white people devils for the actions of some. So we have to always make sure to look at all angles when we're talking about these ideas, because there's been hundreds of years of debate, and we cannot just lean on one side and expect progression to happen. We have to look at all angles and try to look at it from a psychological and realistic and righteous point of view in order to move forward. So I hope this helped you today. And again, let's break these forms of indoctrination. I have ideas in order to break the forms of indoctrination, but in order to break those forms of indoctrination, what we have to understand is, first, we've been taught these things. We've been poisoned with these ideas. So we have to be constructive with our thinking and move forward as human beings. Again, thank you so much for your time. I love you. And please, vibrate higher.